I love making out with you, teasing you with my tongue, biting your lower lip. When you grab my hair so tightly and you turn my head to the side, start kissing my neck and grunting and grabbing my and my thighs with your other hand. And then you rip off my bottoms because you hate it when I have on too many clothes. Oh my God. You don't like to wait. You get impatient and want to get straight to it. I love to grab you, taste you, squeeze you. And you tough my push. What does that even mean? And you tough my push. That must be a typo. The joys of sexting and typos. And you tough my push so slightly, enough to just give me a little tickle. And you feel how wet I am for you. And while you're tickling you keep grabbing and squeezing me, and I start panting, moaning, and squirming. Okay. Then I put like the little asterisks and I write, touch my followed with typos, always throw off the vibe. The joys of sexting and typos. Hello, beautiful people. How are you? Welcome to my channel, Ali here. And in today's video, I am going to be talking to you guys about one of my favorite ways to flirt and build sexual tension, and that is through sexting. I love sexting. And I know it's not for everybody. You either love it or you hate it. Some people don't like sexting because they'd rather be there in person, feel and talk and be physical and all that kind of stuff, which I totally get. But at the same time, sexting can be such a great way to build that tension for when that moment of actual in-person physical intimacy is about to happen. And the other reason why I love sexting, coming from someone who can be quite shy sometimes and coy, it's a really great way to take your time, hide behind a screen, and dive into some fantasies that you might be a little bit shy actually saying out loud with someone in person. It's a really great way to get creative, stretch your imagination a little bit, and really dive into some real deep, dirty fantasies that you might not really ever do or say in real life. So think of it as play. Sexting is like play. It allows you to get creative and stretch your imagination. It allows you to connect with your mind as opposed to using your body. It can be really sexually empowering to just say whatever it is that you want without that stress and pressure to having do it in person. For a lot of people, it allows them a different venue of sexual communication where they can feel a little bit more comfortable expressing their desires, their needs, and their wants through a text rather than actually having to say it verbally. It's a great segue. When it comes to sexting, I think I'm really, really good at it. I think I definitely take it on to another level that maybe is like sexting level 500, definitely not sexting 101, because I really like to build stories with sexting and sort of create this really exciting and exhilarating, paint a picture in someone else's mind with just my words. I think that's really powerful, and it's really empowering to be able to get somebody off just using your words. Let me read an example. And I whisper under my breath, "Daddy, please keep touching me. It feels good." He says, "I love to grab your ass," and my arm touches your pussy. I hear you moaning. I say, "You love to watch me squirm a little bit and get super hot." You tell me, "Daddy's gonna take care of you, don't worry." You lift my shirt up and start licking my nipples and biting me ever so slightly. Oh, mon Dieu. Woo. When I read back on these messages that I've sent, I'm like, damn, I should have been an erotic literature writer. What's the term for that? Erotic literature? Ero literature? Literature erotica? Literotica, that's the word. I should have been a lit erotica writer. Anyways, I am going to be sharing with you guys some little examples of the sex that I have sent, just to give you a little bit of an idea on how far you can go with it and how you could stretch your imagination. But I'm not gonna be giving all the details on YouTube because it can be a little risque, okay? I feel like this is basically porn in a text message. Obviously, YouTube doesn't allow me to post things like that, so you can check it out on my Patreon. And if you do become a member of my Patreon, I just want to say thank you so much, because you will be supporting this channel and you will be supporting me as a creator. So I really, really appreciate it. And thanks to everyone who is currently a member of the Patreon, and the community just keeps growing and growing and growing and growing. But I will definitely share on there some of the stories, the sext stories that I have created out of my mind. And I think you'll find them pretty interesting. I remember that when I first met Gab, after a couple of weeks of getting to know each other more, we started sexting each other a little bit. Also because we were long distance at the time. So, I mean, when you're long distance, you gotta get it on somehow, right? So, you know, you start sending little sexy photos and so on, and it's late night and you're in bed, and then, you know, the sexting begins. Oh my God, it was so fun sexting with him. And I remember that he told me on multiple occasions that he cannot remember the last time that he came without watching porn. So that was a very nice compliment. And he also had sent me voice notes of him coming, which were really hot, but also really hilarious at the same time, because I just wasn't used to that. I've never had a guy send me a voice note of that before. And I think it's a very vulnerable thing to do, because not even I would send an audio note of me like masturbating or something like that. I don't know, maybe I would now, but still, I just felt a little bit uncomfortable and embarrassed doing it. But yeah, like I said, we were long distance, so we had no choice. And when you're long distance, you have other venues to go, like video or phone sex. But to be honest with you, I have never been into video sex. Something about Skype sex doesn't really turn me on to see a guy like jacking off in front of me. I don't really get excited or have pleasure in doing video with a guy. I guess that's part of my stage fright, camera fright, you know, being a little bit shy and so on. And then talking on the phone, also not a super big fan of that, because generally I just don't like to speak. I'm not super quick with words. It just makes me a little bit uncomfortable. I wouldn't say it's my strong suit, phone sex, so I really don't ever do it. But sexting and writing words where I actually have the time, you know, use my imagination and make up scenarios, take my time responding and sort of build up this tension is really fun, because like I said, you're sort of hiding behind that screen. So you could be anyone you want and write out any kind of fantasy, right? When it comes to sexting, you can kind of sext whoever you want as long as it's consensual and solicited, of course. I was never the kind of person, for example, when I was online dating, if a guy would start messaging me, let's get into a sexting situation, or send me an unsolicited dick pic or something like that, ignore suivant next, which means next please, because just like in real life, I need some chemistry, I need some buildup, I need some meat to work with. The only times I would sext with people is when I was actually really, really interested in the guy and we had already started dating and sort of getting to know each other a little bit, and you're in that beginning phase where you're just like really excited all the time and that energy's flowing and there's so much chemistry. Everything they do or say turns you on. Or it could have been someone that I met on an app that I hadn't met yet in person, but we had many deep conversations already, and then would sort of delve into the topic of sex, and then it would be late night, and then it would sort of, you know, turn into something a little bit sexy. Those were the times that I would mostly sext. And honestly, they were always so much fun because you really get to know someone. It can start out just as simple as telling the other person something, you know, that you want to do to them. For example, so does anyone else call you Gabriel? Only my mom. I'm not sure if I want to call you the same thing as your mother, LOL. But I do find calling you by your full name very sexy sometimes. He says, it's a joke. Actually, it was more when I did something wrong years ago. He says, I do think it's sexy and you would be the only one. I say, okay, that's better. I have a craving to bite your lip right now. He says, j'aime ça quand tu fais ça. Je te tiens la tête, la main à travers les cheveux. And I say, I love that too, and I love teasing you with my tongue, yum. And then, you know, the conversation gets flowing into something pretty interesting, I'd say. You gotta keep in mind that not everyone likes to sext, or they're just lacking practice. You gotta gauge the other person a little bit. I mean, you could be direct and ask them straight up, is sexting your thing? And they'll tell you yes or no. Maybe they'll tell you they haven't really done it a lot, but you know, they're willing to try, even though they sound a little bit silly or something like that. that, you gotta sense the reciprocity there and the enthusiasm. That's usually a good sign. If you get a flat tone and they're really not giving you much, then maybe sexting is not their thing, or maybe you're just not that compatible. For example, in Gab's situation, he hadn't really sexted that much, let alone sexted with an anglophone, okay? Because he only dated francophones before me. I was the first anglophone that he dated, and most of our conversations were in English. Thank God, not in French, because honestly, I don't think my sexting game is in French is that good. Even though he lacked practice, he was very much willing and enthusiastic and reciprocated in some ways by just throwing in some, ooh yeah, I like that. And just sort of using whatever words I used to sort of piggyback his responses. So let me give you an example. I say, Daddy takes such good care of his little girl. She feels so special. He says, that part of his baby girl, she likes when Daddy takes care of her. As you can see there, he's basically just regurgitating whatever I said to him back at me. And it works. Let me continue. But she's not always that sweet. She also likes it when he slaps her pussy and he spits in it. Oh my. And he rubs her juices all over her body, making her very, very dirty. And he says, yeah, baby girl needs to taste and feel all her juices. He's not really doing that much. Again, he's just using my words and throwing them back to me. And it works because there's reciprocity, there's enthusiasm. He's like in the story with me. So that's it. You see, like he's not being super creative. He's not making up new stuff, but it works for me because also I like to be in charge of the narrative because it really turns me on to take control of the story and turn him on so much to the point where he's like, oh my God, what is going on right now? How am I so turned on by words only? What is happening to my brain and my dick in this very moment? And also, like I said, you gotta think of it as play, okay? It's almost like regular sex where you sort of wean in and out of laughing about things and then things being really hot and sexy because there's gonna be weird typos and you're gonna feel like you sound like such an idiot. Oh, that's not what I meant to say. And you know, you'll have autocorrect and all that kind of stuff. And you just gotta laugh about those things and sort of shrug it off and just keep going, all right? Don't let that ruin your fun. All right, what are some other examples here? Oh my God, as I'm reading these, honestly, like I said, this is like next level sexting level 500 because there's a whole story here. And sometimes he shoves, and we're getting into third person, okay? Third person. I'm not even talking like you and I, we're talking third person here. And sometimes he shoves it so deep throat and holds it there for a second or two until she can't take it anymore and gags on his big dick. She just wants to be filthy, so he keeps going and going and going. He says, Then he pulls out and starts jacking himself off while he shoves his balls in her mouth and tells her to lick them. Damn, I was good. Again, literotica. Erotica, literature, whatever it is. If you want to hear the rest of that story, because there's a few, you know, full-on stories with like characters and stuff like that, you could check out the Patreon, okay? I'll share one with you guys. I don't talk like that anymore. We haven't sexted in a long time. I feel like sexting sort of dies after a while in your relationship because it's such a fun way to get to know someone. And once you've sort of explored that area a little bit, you're kind of like, okay, suivant next, on to other things that excite you or new things that you are learning to excite you. I don't know if that makes sense or not, but you know what I mean. I wanted to share that with you guys about sexting and urge you, if you're interested in practicing and trying it, give it a go. If you want to practice, I'd say it would probably be good to just like find some random people on some apps and practice some sexting because you don't know them, you'll probably never meet them. What's the harm in practicing a little bit for the time that you actually do meet someone and you want to have a little fun? I'm so happy that I actually have all the messages that we've exchanged since the beginning of our relationship because I find they're so fun to read, to see the evolvement of where we started and where we are today. And it's actually really sweet and romantic, even though I do talk a lot about deep throat and ball licking and thrusting and fucking and anal sex and all that kind of stuff. There is a lot of romanticism in all of that because we were just getting to know each other and we were sort of testing our limits, figuring out what we like and what we don't like. And it actually reminds me of a feeling, you know, when we first started dating, how innocent we were and stuff like that, and the butterflies and all the ooey and gooey stuff inside you. After I read them, I was like, I want to go to bed and have some sex right now with him. Maybe I'll get them printed out and bounded into a book or something. I think it's really nice to have little like mementos like that to sort of bring you back to a time, not just in your relationship, but for yourself too. Because honestly, I haven't written stuff like this in so long. It just reminds me of, you know, how sexual I can be. That's it, friends. I hope you enjoyed this video about sexting. And if you want to support this channel and support me as a creator, you can click the link on the description below to check out my Patreon, where I'm gonna share one of the really hot stories, like damn, that I exchanged with Gab. There's definitely a few more where that came from. But let me know what your thoughts are about sexting. Again, I know it's not for everybody. I know it's also a generational thing too. You know, people who were born before smartphones and so on, or the internet, things like that, aren't used to texting. What are your do's? What are you don'ts? What do you like? What do you not like? I'm curious to know. Drop it in the comments below, and that's it. I'll see you guys in the next video. Je vous aime. Well, I can imagine you at 29, me at 23, meeting in a hot nightclub somewhere in the world. Drink. Oh, a little asterisk. I meant to say drunk. I sense another story coming along. Purple devil emoji. So we're in Rome, summertime. It's hot and sweaty. Pub crawl kind of night. Wow, this is a whole story in itself. Anyways, if you want to hear the rest of it, my gosh, look how long this is. I really went for it here. Anyways, check out the Patreon if you want to hear the story. It's pretty funny. Oh my God, I cracked myself up.